I wanted to shift here for a minute and go through Benghazi from a little bit different light. Most of our listeners have heard you speak about it on other podcasts. Most of our listeners have read the book or seen the movie. How do you view it from a God lens of the amount of times you should have died that night? 330 million Americans. Why were you on that roof that night? And then what that exposed even after that even relates to kind of like the political environment we're in today, looking at our lives in reverse and how God orchestrates things. What kind of things do you see?
You know, and it's interesting because
what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the MTNTOUGH Podcast. I am your host, Dustin Defenderfer, and we are so glad that you are here. We absolutely love seeing you come back to this show week after week, episode after episode, and it is our goal every single time to bring you an inspiring guest, someone that helps you with that mental fitness, that mental toughness, so that you can add some tools to that mindset toolbox so that you can stay dangerous. Shifting gears now to today's guest. I was very excited about this episode because on the show today we have Mark Geist. Many of you have heard Mark Geist and his name. He also goes by Oz, and you've also seen him portrayed in the movie On Benghazi, 13 Hours. Mark was a U.S. Marine and was on the front lines of some of the most intense, high-stakes situations in military history, as he was one of the defenders on the annex during the 2012 attack on the U.S. compound in Benghazi, Libya. We're going to get into that today, and then we're going to get into how his life has changed and what he's been up to since 2012. So please stand by for Mark Oz Geist. I think it would be amazing to start with your heart for law enforcement. And you were sharing a little bit about that with me as we were going home from dinner last night. And I think that's pretty profound and amazing because it is something that's not chatted about much. Mm-hmm. And it also it's close to the heart of MTNTOUGH too. We know that like our number one customer is a hunter, but what we've seen from all of our data and research on MTNTOUGH customers is the number one demographic is a law enforcement officer that's a hunter. And so we have so many first responders and law enforcement officers in our community. I think you sharing some of that would be really helpful on kind of where that heart came from for you and kind of what you're thinking in terms of where you might take that.
Okay.
So you were talking about it last night, but just the day-to-day life of a law enforcement officer. How would you describe that?
You know, and I think an example like a day that I've had when I was in law enforcement, you know, it's you get in, especially if you're working a midnight shift or a swing shift, something like that, you know, your day shift, it's a little bit different types of calls. But, you know, when you're getting in towards the evenings and even in small towns, because that's when the stuff happens. What we see a lot, like, again, going into what one of mine was, I get on duty and, you know, first get on duty, you still have 3 or 4, maybe even up to 8 or 9 calls for service that didn't get covered during the day because they're not priority calls. And not that they're not important, but they're just not the priority calls. And it's a lack of funding, lack of manpower that is why that, you know, for those day shifts. And those calls don't impact the greater public, I don't think, as much as the stuff happens at night. Doesn't mean that they're not important, because they're important to that person that it's happening to, but it's just not life-threatening, immediate, that needs to be taken care of. So unfortunately, it kind of gets pushed back to those other calls. And, I'd get on duty and have 3 or 4 of those sitting in the queue. Well, I'd head over to one, and we were kind of talking about it last night. And on my way there, I got a call that there was a traffic accident, and it was a traffic rollover. And so I roll up on a minivan that had gotten hit and ended up rolling. And when I roll up, there's a lady standing on the side of the road crying. I hear a child inside crying and screaming for its mother. And as I walk around the van, there in the middle of the road is a brain, the whole brain. And what had happened is, as that vehicle had rolled and came to its final rest, the mother, who was in the front passenger seat, her head had gotten in between the ground and the vehicle, and she was just flattened out. And so my first thing is, I'm going to go check on the child. I go in, get her out, but as I'm getting her out, she's sitting right behind where her mother was. And so what my focus is to keep that child from having to see that. So I'm just asking her to look at me. And, I'm really wanting her to focus there. And as I get her out of her seatbelt, get her undone, and she just crawls to me real quick, grabs a hold of me, and I get her out. And she just wouldn't let go of me. And, I can still feel that hug, I guess, is that sense of security that for whatever reason I gave her at that time. Get out, and I go over and ask the lady that was crying who she is. She's the aunt, and I'm trying, okay, here's your niece. And the girl didn't want to go over there at all.
Just locked onto you.
Yeah. So, and then while that's happening, medical shows up and another officer shows up. Well, I get another call for a domestic in progress. So I have to now then separate myself from this child. I hand her off to medical because she wouldn't go to her aunt, and get in my car and head to another call. And it was a 10-minute, maybe 15-minute drive. I get over to it, and as I'm rolling up, it's one of those motels, ground motels, outside entrance, in a less than desirable part of town. There's a bar across the street, and when I'm rolling up, I see a lady on a phone, and there's nothing going on, and I turn my red and blues off and roll in, and as I get out, I can hear the lady that's on the phone saying, "You called the cops." Well, I found out later that she called the cops. It wasn't her that called them. It was actually her sister she was on the phone with in another state who had called 911. But I could see that the lady on the phone, she had a black eye, a busted lip, a bloody nose. And I'm like, okay, who had this happen? And she says, well, me and my husband got into an argument. And while her husband I asked where he was, and he was inside the room. And she's like, okay, but he's passed out. He's asleep, so everything's good. There's nothing else that we need. That's why, she didn't want the cops to be called. Well, I've got evidence that there's a crime, so I'm going to go arrest him. I go in. He's passed out on this bed. I wake him up. He comes up swinging at me, not even knowing who I am. And so I have to diffuse that situation, physically put him back down into the headboard and on the mattress, and handcuff him. And as I'm handcuffing him, I get hit over the head with a lamp by the lady who he had just beat.
Dang.
Cuts my head open. I got, 4 or 5 stitches that ended up getting off that, and ended up having to arrest her as well, because now she's assaulted a police officer, and end up getting that all taken care of, get them put in jail, and then I've got to write my report. Before I get my report, I hand everything off to another officer that shows up, and I end up going to the hospital, get everything sewn up, and then get my reports done. By that time, it's coming on the end of the shift, and now I've got to go home. And when I get home, I don't want to take this into the house. No, we as men, I think, really try to protect our families that way and pull into the garage, get undressed, kind of hide everything so my wife ain't going to find my uniform. Go
Blood
in.
on it.
Yeah, because she's got to get up and take care of the kids and get to work. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just going to tell her, hey, it's a good day. It was just uneventful. You don't share that. And I tell the story mostly because that probably happens for a law enforcement officer, every law enforcement officer across the country, a couple times a month at least, if not, there's always that kind of stuff going on. And I don't think we as a society want to understand what law enforcement does on a day-to-day basis. And it varies if you're out in the, from your rural areas, but it's everywhere. I mean, there's domestic violences everywhere. There's drunk drivers. There's people that just, they're doing bad things. And really, I don't think we as a population understand what our cops, our law enforcement, our sheriffs do for us and how they protect us on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's a powerful example of that was one day in your life as a law enforcement officer, and then you have to go back into that immediately that next night and that next night and that next night. Maybe every night isn't as drastic as that, but you're going to continue to see things that are just as dramatic. Every car wreck has a chance of something being horrific in it, and then a lot of welfare checks, a lot of suicides, a lot of being the first to arrive on a suicide. And you're seeing that over and over and over again throughout a law enforcement career without any opportunity to really process. Even your story from going from the car wreck where there is a brain on the road immediately to a domestic dispute. There's no time in between those two calls to process what you just have been through.
Right.
So that must just get bottled up for it's a lifelong, it's a 365 every year deployment. There's not a big deployment break.
Right. Yeah. I mean, most of my shifts were probably 10-hour shifts, working, 4 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 3 days off, kind of that kind of routine. But even then it's, what do you do when you're off duty? You're not talking about what you were doing on duty. You don't want to process it. So, you're trying to keep it from your family, and you just internalize it, and it's just a job, and you're going to, at least for me, it was put it aside and move forward because there's going to be another day.
Mm-hmm. And so now it's fun to think about kind of God working in our lives, and we've been chatting about that quite a bit. And it's always hard to see what he's up to in the future. And that's where, a lot of us struggle is, what's he doing now? What's he doing that's going to change the trajectory of my life over the next 10, 15 years? And we never get 100% clarity on that. So we have to live by faith each day. But it's always been fun for me to look backwards. And when we look backwards over our lives, we can see a lot of the orchestration of God and why he had us do certain things at a certain time. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like with what you are up to now with Shadow Warrior and with your heart for law enforcement, in some way do you feel like you've been through things that created a platform that allows you to represent these guys, help these guys, serve these guys, and kind of communicate what they go through every day?
I do. I feel like that's kind of one of the next steps is focusing a lot more on that, because I'm always one, in my prayers, wondering and asking God, to give me the discernment on what's next. And there's a lot of things that come out and that get tossed in my sphere. And, one of the challenges I think I've had is maintaining the discernment and focus on what really He wants me to do instead of some of these distractions. Because, I get headed in one direction, and then something comes up sometimes, and I've got to make sure that I don't allow that to separate me from really what I think that is where the purpose is. And that's to share through my life's experiences, share my faith and my walk with Christ, and how important I think it is for everybody to have that, and to really put that faith in Him, in Jesus, in Christ. As we were talking, faith and fear can't occupy the same space. And it's the devil that likes to be that. I think back to when I was young in school, in school and in TV, they always had the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. And that's what we face every day. You have those two things in your ears, and you got to have the discernment to understand that it's, which one's best for you, and that's through faith.
It's pretty wild that God over and over and over again in our lives allows us to build some sort of platform, and then gives us the opportunity to use that for Him or not. And that's where it's our chance to be obedient. But we've actually talked about that on this show. Like Rich Froning is an example that comes to my mind of, he was the king of CrossFit for a while and won, I think, six games as an individual, and then another handful as a team. And so his athletic pursuits created this massive platform. And then this massive platform allowed him to speak to millions of people about Christ. And he had the chance to say no and not do that, but he decided to be obedient and did that. But God gave him those athletic abilities to make that happen. And then the ripple effects of that, who knows what the ripple effects of that are going to be for the next generations. And your story, and all stories are similar, but yours is unique in that your platform came from a great career, but it came from one terrible day, one unique day where a very unique conflict kicked off, and you found yourself on a roof that led to all eyes being on what happened that day. But then you had that same chance after that event, after your recovery, of the relationship capital that created. God gave you the chance. Can you use that for His kingdom? And it sounds like that is what you're thinking about now, and that is what you are up to now.
Yeah, it's always been, because it would have been really easy to just stay in the shadows. I didn't. I could have had a good retirement from that point on, not had to worry too much about things, but I don't think that was in the cards. I mean, one, I don't think it was in the cards in general, and two, it's not what not what I felt, and I think God guided me on, because that night I should have died at least 3 times. I did die on the plane from Tripoli to Germany and was resuscitated. And I always kind of figured that the Lord's kept me around for a reason, and who am I to question what that is? Who am I to, say, to not utilize that to make something better for someone else. And I think that all kind of goes back to just everything that I've done in my life, because all of my life has been about service to others. It's joining the Marine Corps. It's being in law enforcement. It's being a volunteer firefighter, being an EMT, working as a contractor, protecting, training Iraqi SWAT teams, protecting State Department personnel, protecting CIA personnel. It's all, that's service. What it is. And I think that's God. I was born with a servant's heart.
That's your assignment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that a little bit, just from your life story and faith story. So kind of going back to your childhood, what did that look like, and really what did your testimony look like from a faith perspective?
I grew up in southeastern Colorado I kind of joke about it, but I tell people, if you remember in school where they told you where the buffalo roam, that's kind of where I grew up, in southeastern Colorado, where the buffalo used to roam. The little town called Rocky Ford. The town got its name because that's where the Santa Fe Trail that came out of St. Louis down through Kansas cuts across the Arkansas River and heads down towards New Mexico, down to Santa Fe. And that place where they crossed the river was a rocky spot where they forded the river, and that's how the town got its name. Near there's an old fort, an adobe fort that was built. It was Bent's Fort. It was a trading fort that was built by the Bent brothers, but that's the history of the area. And my great-grandfather settled in that area in 1910. So I was really kind of had a blessed childhood, because I got to grow up with probably 90% of my family being within 20 miles of each other. I mean, both sets of grandparents were in the same spot. Most of my cousins and uncles and aunts were all in that same area. So, that was kind of gave me that foundation of what a good, what family should be. And, my grandmother was one of the toughest ladies I've ever met. She was probably 4'11". She was crippled up from a car accident when my mom was 12. She had one leg that was about 2 to 3 inches shorter than the other, but every morning and every night at 5 o'clock a.m. and p.m. she would go out and milk 4 milk cows by hand. And she had a garden that was half the size of a football field. I mean, I never drank store-bought milk until I went to school.
Man.
We grew everything. We raised everything. We raised chickens. We had our own eggs. We raised chickens for meat, for pullets, for food. We raised our pigs, sheep, cattle, horses, everything. And I mean, to me, what better life was there than that? And I grew up in the Methodist Church. Had a wonderful youth pastor and his wife that were very instrumental in building my faith and my foundation of that, and like every young man, and I shouldn't say every, but a lot of young men, you get in your teenage years, and I mean, by no means was I always a good kid.
Yeah, there's some rebellion.
Sure. Raised a lot of hell, drag racing, just doing stuff that you shouldn't do. But it was, and then I knew one of two things I wanted to do in life, and that was either join the Marine Corps or, and actually it was just either join the military. I wasn't set on the Marine Corps right away, or be a cowboy on a ranch. And I would have loved either one of those. And, my grandfather was a World War II veteran. He was really my hero. I had 3 uncles that were in during Vietnam, 2 in the Navy, 1 in the Marine Corps. And the one in the Marine Corps was probably what pushed me. And not that he pushed me, but just knowing that he was and how he was, and how he was instrumental, as well as in making me tough, because you couldn't be soft around him. There was no such thing as really crying or whining about something. If you did, you got punched in the arm. You know, toughen up. Buttercup is kind of the concept. But, you know, I joined the Marine Corps, and I think, you know, again, I tell people, here's the straight and narrow, you know, and I kind of bounced back and crossed between the left and right lateral limb. It's kind of through that. And as life was going on, I mean, there was always something that would happen if I was getting too far out of center that would be a course correction. And one that was significant was we were in the Philippines, and we were patrolling up this cliff, and the edge, it was about between 30 and 40 foot drop off, and as we're patrolling up the edge, one of the guys got too close, slipped, and fell off of that edge, and they yelled out that he fell, and I immediately ran back down the hill, come around, and as I come around, he's standing in this pool of water that was maybe a foot, 2 feet deep, and the pool of water was maybe 3 times the size of this table that we're on, and everything else around there was rocks. And, you know, my first concern is he okay? Is he okay? And I'm like, you know, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? He says, yeah. Hey, Corporal Geist, I want to tell you something. I got to show you something. And I'm like, what? He's like, are you okay? And again, I'm just trying to figure out if he's okay, because he just fell 30, 40 feet. Even if he landed in the water, you know, and he's like, no, I got to tell you something. And I'm like, okay, great. Tell me, but are you okay? And he says, no, God caught me and moved me over. And I'm like, okay, great, but are you okay? You know, because I'm just thinking of his physical being, you know, and he says, no, look up. And I looked up, and where he fell from was probably 15, 20 feet from where he landed.
No way.
And he swore that God caught him and moved him over.
Scooted him over.
Yeah. He goes, I felt him catch me and move me over. And everything else around there was rocks. And if he had fell anywhere else other than in that pond, he wouldn't have survived.
And that's when you were a young Marine.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Probably mid-20s, early to mid-20s. And, you know, and I think I look back on it and realize now everything that I've been through as well. I look to the different things that have happened in my life that have, okay, that's God kind of telling me, get back to center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what a blessing it was for that youth pastor to set that foundation for you as a kid. And we all might rebel as we're teenagers and college age, but having that foundation to come back to is a game changer versus not having that at all and kind of finding your faith for the first time in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's even, I mean, again, you know, as we were talking last night and this morning, is there's probably more times if you go back and look at your life, how your light had shone for others without it being something that was thought through by yourself. You know, it's because like another time we had a young Marine in my unit that was just got there. He was LDS, and because he was a little different than everybody else, you know, young men, especially in that kind of environment, look for that one thing that's different, and they'll kind of attack it and see if you're, you know, especially in something like the Marine Corps, you're going to fight back, and you're going to be that, you know, because you are a little bit different. Are you going to still fight for yourself and who you are and show your character? And we were having a conversation about that and about our relationships with God, and, you know, the difference between religion and faith, because I think there's a significant difference in, and, you know, and as we're sitting there talking, there was an earthquake. We're in Southern California. Wasn't something big, but we start feeling this earthquake and look out, and you can see the ground rolling, almost like a wave coming through it, and it picks up the building. We're in a 3-story barracks, and it kind of picks it up, rolls it. Nothing got damaged or anything like that, but again, and I never thought of anything about it then, but I look back now and I see that as being another significant thing that kind of is like, you know, hey, the Lord is again reaching out, and putting something there that it reminds me of where I should be and not always where I want to be.
Yeah. And just an earthquake happens as you're talking to a guy about faith, and just the miracles that are around us all the time that we don't always see because we're not paying attention to them.
Yeah.
And whether we're paying attention to them or not, they're happening. But then every now and then us catching a glimpse of them and really latching onto them. It's almost like some theologians describe it as you have to live your life as if everything is a miracle or nothing at all is. And that's kind of the way I've started to view it. Is earlier on in my life, it was thinking about it from these amazing things that might happen every couple years as miraculous things. But as I've gotten older, it's become much more clear to me that every single thing is a miracle that we're encountering almost every single day, because it's orchestrated by God. I mean, the fact that you and I are sitting here together is miraculous. Even the connections that we had at dinner last night that we didn't realize that we had before sitting down at that dinner. And of all the people in the world, the fact that we're here in this room is a miracle, but so is everything else in our lives. And I think that it took me a while to have that mindset shift, but that mindset shift has been super helpful to me.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, because I don't know if it's indoctrinated or trained. I mean, what's a miracle? You know, we think of miracles as being these grand things that happen, when it could be something as simple as the impact that you made on one person for that day. You know, you're walking through a door and you hold the door for somebody who's struggling, or, you know, the person that's on the corner begging, you know, well, I know they're just going to be using this money for drugs. Well, it ain't about what they use it for. It's about why you give it. You know, and that you don't know if that could be the miracle that changes their direction as well, or impacts their life. And it may not change it. Most likely probably won't, but it may impact it enough that they do something again, you know, and pass that on. And again, I think, you know, it makes me think of, and we had talked about this too, but it makes me think of when I was in the church choir, we used to sing the song, This Little Light of Mine, I'm going to let it shine. You know, hide it under a bushel, no. And too many times we have this, all of us have this light that we can share of goodness and grace and understanding with others, and not hide it. Don't be shy with it, because God has given that to us to do just that, is to shine. And if we let our light shine, it'll give permission to others to do the same. And people want to know how to change the world in the way we are right now, and it's through letting our light shine and being that person, even if it's only two people that you affect, and those two go and affect two people and two people. You know, God is great at building multi-level marketing. If we let him if we allow him to shine through what we do.
Yeah, it's so true. Hey guys, I did want to interrupt for a quick minute right here and let you know about some supplements I've been taking. I did shy away from supplements for a long time. I was always cautious about what they were made out of, where they were from, and who the team was behind the brands. But over the last couple of years, I've got to meet the team at Mountain Ops from top to bottom, and they are an amazing group of humans. I've got to know the CEO, Trevor Farnes, really well, and he is a mission-focused individual that cares about humans living a better quality of life so that they can have that abundant life. So over the last couple of years, he has helped me add some things that have changed the game for me. One of those things that I've added is creatine from Mountain Ops. It helps me maintain some muscle mass, but also it's a big player in cognitive function, one of the most researched supplements out there. Also, I've added reds, greens, and protein, all from Mountain Ops. What I found as a busy professional, always on the run, I do eat a whole foods diet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but on the go, it's hard to get enough vegetables, fruits, and protein. So I've added that from Mountain Ops, and it has significantly changed the game. I can feel it in my performance. I haven't got sick for a long, long time, and I can certainly feel it in my mental clarity as well. The last thing I've added is the Mountain Tough Hydrate product for the backcountry, for hunting season. When I'm in the hills, I do run short on those electrolytes. We even have a Mountain Tough flavor, the Mountain Tough Lemon Lime Hydrate, and that is a game changer for hydration in the backcountry. So I keep it really simple. That is all I've added to my protocol, and it has certainly helped me, and I certainly believe in the team and the culture behind Mountain Ops. They have started an initiative that's been around for a while called Conquer Hunger. Conquer Hunger is giving meals to hungry kids that aren't getting enough food, and they've given out over 6 million meals plus to kids through their Conquer Hunger initiative. So every order that happens at Mountain Ops, a percentage of that order goes to Conquer Hunger. So certainly an incredible company, an incredible culture. As a listener to the show, you do get an exclusive offer to Mountain Ops, so make sure you check that out. The offer is incredible as a first-time purchase at mountainops.com. So build your order if it's your first time. They are offering you a 20% exclusive discount. All you need to do is enter the promo code Mountain Tough, all one word, all caps, for 20% off your first order at mountainops.com. And it's the world is dark now, and it feels extremely dark at sometimes with everything that's going on in our current environment. But we know that darkness can't exist at all, even with a little tiny bit of light in it. So the darkest of all dark rooms is no longer dark anymore once you expose it to the tiniest flashlight, a lighter, the tiniest phone light. That room is no longer dark. And I think that that's what he wants us to do, is just be that light, be a light throughout our day, every day. And we don't know what that fruit is going to produce. We don't know what that ripple effect is going to do. It might be massive. We might see the impacts of it in our lifetime, or we might never see it. And we might die and realize it in heaven, that one person that we encouraged or that one person that we helped actually created this massive ripple effect. But it's not really for us to see. It's for us to do and just trust that it's going to lead in the right direction.
Well, and it's like you said, I mean, treating everything as if it's a miracle. Be that miracle for somebody. And it's, again, because it doesn't have to be great. The greatest of miracles could be something very small. And, you said the absence of light, or the absence of, because what is there's no such thing as darkness. Darkness is only the absence of light. Mm-hmm. And if we don't allow light to shine, as you were saying, then it becomes dark. And that's where, the world is right now, is around that darkness, because people are afraid to let their light shine. And we can't let other people stop us from doing that. I got to meet Charlie Kirk in 2016, early on, and got to meet him and talk with him quite a bit. Me and him and traveled a lot during the first campaign for the president, raising money with some other people, with Don Jr. and a few others. And, got to know him early on in his life. He was still early 20s, I think, but he always was impactful. And he obviously he was a brilliant young man. And to see him, we didn't get together a lot over the years. Every now and then we'd talk on the phone about sometimes significant things, sometimes very insignificant things. But you could always see when I saw him doing what he did is, he to think if he hadn't been who he was and utilized and followed what the Lord put on his heart to do, and we can all do that same thing to some degree, is when we have people that are disagreeing with us, we don't need to be angry. We don't need to be attacking them with hate. We need to approach them through love. And that's, I think, that's something that Charlie did gratefully, is invite people that disagreed with him to come in and talk and be together, and him give them the respect to talk and let them be heard. And then he would tell them, and he did it in a way that was different than most people do, because it was almost if they made a statement, he would then ask them a question back about, okay, well then, how do you explain that is the case? Or
which is what Jesus did, just always ask those questions.
And then it makes people think. Because if I come back and say, no, you're wrong, well, you're going to get defensive. And instead of doing that, why do you think that way? Because then they're like, I don't know, let me see. Why do I think that, having complete co-ed sports is okay? Combining men and women into one. Well, there's a reason we didn't. But now, if you ask me that question, I can ask you back, why do you think that way? You're going to have to think it through instead of just tout something, and that's what he was wonderful at doing. And, and through that, he shined his light, and we have to take that. And we're in a time where we need to take that. And you see it with all of the applications that have come through for Turning Point chapters in so many high schools. And I think that generation that's coming up right now are in a position that they will make such a difference in the direction of this country that we don't even see it yet. But it's God working.
Yeah, and we're catching glimpses of that with the absolute kind of revival that broke out after Charlie's death. A revival that hasn't been seen in a long time in America, and so much of that came from him being killed, and it wouldn't have happened without him being killed. And it's interesting to me. I've been interviewing a lot of men recently because I started a new brotherhood program called The Sword, and in The Sword, it's helping men break through and realize that they were made for more. And I think men all know in their bones that they were made for more, and they feel it, but they don't quite know how to get there. And they don't quite know how to overcome the fear that's holding them back from doing what they know they should do. And in a lot of those interviews, it came up over and over and over again that Charlie said he wanted to be known for being courageous in his faith, and then he died. He died and became legendary for being courageous in his faith. And the sin of Adam that most men struggle with, because it's as old as time, is men have a hard time getting over passivity and complacency. And so even believers, men that are strong Christians, they all saw Charlie in the way that he could articulate his faith, and they want some of that. We all want some of that. We all want some of that ability. How can I be in any environment and people in that environment know that I'm a believer without it being offensive? And Charlie carried that so well. And I think that that's inspiring for so many of us, because there are so many believers that love God and are relying on God every single day, but you put them in a room of 30 non-believers, and it's harder to carry that light. But I think Charlie was a phenomenal role model for how to do that.
Yeah, I think he was. I mean, and along with that, I think because you're right, it's hard to. I mean, and even for me, as much as I've for several years after Benghazi, I always kind of, and I guess this is the best way to put the difference is, I used to tell the story of Benghazi, and then I'd filter my faith in there, here and there. Now I talk about my faith, and I filter Benghazi in there, here and there.
Yeah.
And and a lot of that came from just a conversation I had with Victor Marks one time, as we were sitting there talking about it and talking about faith and and where my path is, and and he said, there's plenty of, because I don't know scripture, I can't quote scripture, I can tell stories about it because I've read the Bible, I've read it several times, it was taught to me as a child, and up through my teen years, but I never could memorize Timothy 1:4 could tell you what that is. But as Victor said, he goes, you talking about your faith, you don't need to quote scripture, because there's plenty of theologians out there that can quote scripture, but they don't necessarily have the same faith or story that you have. You have something that's unique to everybody, is your experience, not just the experience in Benghazi, which was probably the most profound, that really, as I say, I'm a stubborn, hard-headed Marine who's German descent. You don't get much you're not much more stubborn than that.
Yeah.
And it took me getting blown up 3 times to sit there and say, okay, Lord, you got my attention. What do you want? I've always lived my life for the Lord, but not always by the Lord. And
which is common.
Yeah. We do it to make, we try to follow the Lord and our faith in a way that works for us, that doesn't disrupt our life too much, that isn't very difficult. We like to have that, like you said, that passivity, that easy, the soft waves of a ripple, instead of what Christ wants us to be is a tidal wave. And and that's really kind of where mine is now, is I'm going to be a tidal wave. I'm going to tell everybody my story, how Christ saved me, how he loves me, and how he can do the same thing for you.
I love that, because there's a difference between typical American Christianity, where I think many of us find ourselves calling ourselves Christians just because we're Americans, and even then sometimes Christians because we grew up in a Christian household or a Christian community. There's kind of a polar difference between that and complete surrender, complete, total kind of daily surrender, that we're gonna look for God's will and be obedient to God's will, and just trust in his promises, and trust that he's going to deliver on those promises of always providing, and also that we can't really fear death, because if we die, we're going to a better place. And the difference between knowing about God and the Bible and complete total surrender are 2 different categories. And it sounds like you are getting closer to the total surrender spectrum, but it took getting blown up 3 times to get there, which is also common. I mean, God will bring the house of cards down on men to wake them up over and over and over again.
There's a book I'm reading, it's Spiritual Warfare. I think it's by John Payne. And he talks about it there as in, my body is my house, and I let God own it, but I don't necessarily let him into every room that's in there.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is total surrender, is opening every door, unlocking, taking the locks off of every door in our body, in our home, and allow the Lord to be in there, and to fix what is broken in us. And then when we do that, it is revealing. And we think of it as a struggle. Somebody who struggles with addiction of any type, whether it's pornography, whether it's alcohol or drugs or hate, holding on hate and failing to forgive. They're Christians, they go to church, they talk about the Lord, but they don't open up those spaces sometimes because, one, they don't feel worthy, and two is when you open that door, you have to face what's in it and clean it up and let the Lord do it. But once it's done, and that's the one thing, for me, that's kind of like you said, that's what I think Benghazi, and over the years since Benghazi, there's, it's not like every door was open after Benghazi, but it sure got me focused on opening every door and letting out all of those things. A friend of mine, we were talking about, I was looking at doing kind of a mini doc on Benghazi afterwards, what happened there after and all of that. And it's
after that night.
Yeah, because there was, a lot of things that happened that not just in Benghazi that people don't realize. That was, I think, personally, I think we failed to recognize and get behind because, there were so many protests, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people protesting for the ambassador and that he was killed. Not protesting that he died, was protesting how good a man that he was, that were Libyans. The Libyans went in and attacked the terrorists that were there and kicked them out of Benghazi. And from a political standpoint alone, but from a faith standpoint, what a way to reach out and touch them as well. Even though through our differences we still can recognize goodness and to tell that story. And in that, a friend of mine was asking me, he says, well, what if you were, if you were over there again or even here in the States and you met somebody from Libya who said that they were part of the mortar team that dropped the mortars on you, that killed Ty and Glenn, what would you tell them? Because I would have to say for a few years, at least for several years after, what I would tell them was probably not very, I don't even know if I'd have said anything. It would have been a whole different action. Yeah. But, when I was talking with him, it was the first thing that came to mind is I forgive you. And that's how I feel, because forgiveness isn't something that I'm doing for them.
It's for you. Forgiveness
is something I have to do for myself. We have to forgive ourselves for holding that hate. We have, or that depression. And, when we do that, we release their hold on us. What did I hear? I don't know who I heard it from.
That poison's in you.
But you are giving, by giving forgiveness, you are taking away your reason to hate. And that is such a release that we all have to do that on a regular, we all carry those demons of things, whether it was, some type of abuse that we had as a child, whether it's sexual or physical, if you had a father that beat you or a mother that left you, whatever, you have to forgive them. And that forgiveness frees you up. It doesn't free them up of the responsibility that the Lord will hold on them. but it releases that responsibility of that evil holding on you.
Yeah.
Because, and you don't have to do it to their face, their face or anything like that. You just have to do it to the Lord. And I think that's, one of the greatest things that, and I'd never even thought of it that way until I said that to him. And he was like, yeah, so really you don't even need to go make that documentary, because your idea of making that was putting that together and putting yourself in a position where that could happen, and it's already happened.
That's profound. It took you a while to get there too, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But realizing you holding on to that bitterness is poisoning you. It's killing you. It's not hurting them. It's not hurting the one that harmed you.
Yeah, because me holding on to that, and it really wasn't hate that I had, or I didn't think it was, because, early on when in the process of writing the books and stuff like that so I had been asked, do you hate the people that were trying to kill you? And I don't hate them, but I hadn't really forgiven them. And I think there's a difference there too, because that forgiveness is, again, me forgiving them took away any right that emotionally I think that they had over me, or that event had over me. And, and I think that's what's so important about it is, and it is such a release that, you look back and it's like, because what is, if I'm holding on that hate or holding on to something that's tangible back to them, am I affecting them? No.
Mm-mm. They're not even thinking about you.
Yeah. They're on with their life doing whatever they're doing. But why would I let that affect me? Why do I want to have to, and I encourage people to, to forgive that, to let that go, because when you do, you'll see, that's when your light will then really shine.
Mm-hmm. It is supernatural. It's supernatural for you to get there, and for that to be obvious in your mind. It's like only with the grace of God could you forgive someone that was trying to kill you. I know that in the book and movie Unbroken, which is about Louis Zapparini, he goes 42 days in that raft, and then he's picked up by the Japanese. He also prayed that, God, if you get me out of this raft, I'll commit the rest of my life to you. After his prayer, he sees a boat, thinking it's the Americans, it's the Japanese. And then he goes into those multiple years of that POW camp where one guy beat him specifically worse than anyone else because he was an American Olympic athlete. Mm-hmm. But before Louis passed, he flew back over there and forgave that guy. He forgave the exact guy that beat him. But it was through the grace of God that he was able to do that. I think for individuals that aren't Christians, to wrap their mind around that kind of forgiveness is difficult.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is. And that's again because I think a lot of times it's that spiritual warfare that we face is, and because there's somebody whispering in your ear, whether it be a friend or, whatever, it's something's whispering, telling you, whether you're telling yourself that, I don't deserve this, or, I don't deserve to be that kind of a person. Mm-hmm. I can't forgive myself because why would I forgive them? They hurt me. They did this to me. They did that to me. Forgiveness is not even usually in their repertoire. Mm-hmm. And it kind of makes me think of that old that saying of the guy that got landed on this desert island, in the middle of the ocean, and he's praying to God, God, rescue me. Well, an airplane flies over, and they send him a note, and that they'll come back, and he's like, no, God's going to save me. Don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden a boat shows up, and hey, somebody comes in on a raft and says, hey, we're here to save you. He said, no, God's going to save me. Don't worry about it. And then he dies and he goes to heaven, and he's like, God, I thought you were going to come save me. And he says, hey, idiot, I did. I sent an airplane. I sent a boat. I sent a helicopter. I sent all these things to help you, but you just failed to see it.
Yeah.
Because you were just blind with whether it's the hate or, and that's where that forgiveness comes in.
Yeah.
Is, because when you think of, from my experience in dealing with a lot of veterans since Benghazi and dealing with them and PTSD and things like that, what I seem to find is that people who have trauma from a childhood that they have not dealt with struggle the most with what they go through as an adult, especially as veterans they see in combat. And I think
that's so fascinating.
Because you haven't dealt with that. Now, I think you have a bucket. We all have a bucket, and it's different sizes, and there's only so much that it can take, and then it's going to come out. And we fail to do that. And that's we have to get rid of that. We have to forgive. And I think the way to get rid of that trauma as a child is to forgive that person that did that trauma to you, because you keeping it are not allowing. You're not hindering the person who did that to you, or whatever that trauma is, from living their life. You're preventing yourself from living the life that you can to its fullest.
That is insanely fascinating, because there is a tremendous amount of literature, podcasts, research, documentaries coming out in the last couple of years around the plant medicines. And we don't need to get into the plant medicine discussion today, but the thing that I find incredibly fascinating about all of that, and a lot of it is all like Stanford studies now, when all of those veteran individuals that are studied in that literature and in those research papers go in for treatment, they are all going in for treatment for PTSD related to combat. They all find in that process, and they all see and experience healing through childhood trauma over and over and over and over again. You can look at some of that, and like 10 individuals will go in for PTSD treatment related to combat. All 10 of them don't talk about combat at all in the therapy. They process childhood trauma. Some of it is extremely extreme, sexual abuse. Some of it is extreme to them, but you would see it more as like just a really bad, violent father. Mm-hmm. And they all come out of that with healing from dealing with that childhood trauma, not the extreme combat that they've gone through. It's wild.
Yeah, and where I've seen it to that point is, so we, Shadow Warriors Project, my nonprofit, we do a canine therapy course. We're faith-based, and everything we do with the dogs is done in threes, because it's the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And it opens up an easy way to talk about Christ with the dogs, because everybody can understand that a dog is different than any other animal in that relationship that we have, and I'll get a lot of kickback from this, but I don't necessarily believe that dogs are descendants of the wolf, because I've been around wolves. I've never seen a wolf leave its own kind to come be with man. Mm-hmm. I've been around dogs my whole life, and I've seen dogs will leave their pack or their other litter mates or the other dogs that they are with to come be with man. I think God put them on this earth to be our companions, and we use that. So, we use the dogs to teach people how to manage their anxiety and their stress, because you're not going to ever get rid of those memories. It's a matter of then understanding and managing how to, when that stress comes up, how to let it out. And so we introduce them to Christ. We use the dogs to manage their anxiety or teach them to manage their anxiety. And then the last thing we do is everybody has to tell their story. Because for me, telling my story, and I've told it 10,000 times, is the most cathartic thing and the best thing that's ever happened to me. Because it's allowed me to process and unpack everything that I've ever been through, and to look at things from a different standpoint and see how that was. But what we see is, like in Roan, my service dog, we're usually sitting on tables like this in the training room, and we'll be sitting up there, and she'll come up and lay beside me as somebody's telling their story. And if they struggle, the moment they start struggling, she can detect that. She goes up, jumps beside them, sits down, and you can see a transformation once she sits next to them and they touch her.
Oh.
It eases their ability to tell their story.
That's incredible.
I was another incident like that was I was down in Oklahoma City attending a fundraiser for Toby Keith before he passed away. He has an organization that's called the OK Kids Corral. Basically, it's kind of like a Ronald McDonald House for the cancer center there in Oklahoma City that he paid for and built and run, and his family continues to run that. But we were sitting across from where the event was, the people that invited me, and we were having a drink and just kind of talking, and their friends came in, and it was one of the leading doctors in brain cancer and brain surgery in Oklahoma. Him and his wife come in, and they sat down kind of on the other side of the coffee table, and the couches that we were sitting on. And Roan just automatically gets up when that lady came in and sat down and walked straight over to her, goes over and puts her chin right on her leg, and the lady just starts bawling. Well, her friend leans over that invited me and says she just had to put her dog down today.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's that compassion that we don't get from each other, but we can get from them.
And they can sense that emotion with someone they don't even know.
Yeah.
Just the energy that human is putting out, they can read it.
And it goes back to what you were talking about, the childhood trauma. With most of what we see is the stories is it comes out, is why people react the way they do. And I would say that to any type of trauma, most people, and again, I can't, I'm not a doctor, I don't have any studies that I can refer to, but I think there's a lot of that is what's really hurting our society. And as the Bible tells us, you who hurts, and I can't quote it, but basically, you who bring damage to it or hurt to a child, might as well have a millstone wrapped around your neck and be thrown over in the ocean. And that as we've talked, I mean, obviously that's something that's really passionate to me is protecting our children.
Yeah. And the devil knows that if he can get us when we're kids, we can't make the impact that we need to make.
Yeah.
He can take us out early.
Yeah.
I wanted to shift here for a minute and go through Benghazi from a little bit different light, because most of our listeners have heard you speak about it on other podcasts. Most of our listeners have read the book or seen the movie. But I loved the discussion we were having this morning, being removed from that for a few years now. How do you kind of view that event and leading up to the event, the night of the attack, and then multiple years after it? How do you view it now from like a God lens? How do you view it from a God lens of the amount of times you should have died that night 330 million Americans. Why were you on that roof that night? And then what that exposed even after that even relates to kind of like the political environment we're in today. When you think about it from looking at our lives in reverse and how God orchestrates things, what kind of things do you see? For more than a century, America's sportsmen and women have led the way in paying for the restoration of wildlife, conserving habitat, and investing in the future of our natural world. This is a legacy built not on what we take ourselves, but on what we give back. That's the nature of conservation, paying it forward for the next generation. This is the reason Mountain Tough is a proud partner of Wild Sheep Foundation, an organization committed to keeping and putting wild sheep on the mountain. If you're not already a member, learn more today at wildsheepfoundation.org.
You know, and it's interesting because I get asked a lot, you know, because people are like, you know, I'm sorry that we left you, that, you know, you guys got left behind, or that this didn't happen. And I'm, you know, and they're like, you know, a lot of times they'll ask me, what do you feel about that? And, you know, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And I'm like, I wouldn't change a thing, because when I look back and see what happened, it starts, you know, it starts long before September 11th, 2012. You can go actually probably a year before that, and if not, really it starts even before that, after in 2000, I think 13 or 14, when we hang Saddam, or when the Iraqi people hang Saddam for his lack of leadership, or his, you know, for all the things that he did in Iraq. And after that had happened, you know, we look back and see what was going on in Libya at the time, and that was when Muammar Gaddafi, you know, who is the greatest, at least politics tell us, is he's the greatest, you know, threat to America that there ever was, because of everything. You know, the Lockerbie, Scotland bombing, you know, he was responsible for allowing that to happen, funding and training of the terrorists that blew up the airplane over Lockerbie, Scotland, and all that he had done. But at that time in 2000, what was it? Actually, no, it was 5 or 6, I think, when we hanged Saddam. President Bush at the time had seen what Gaddafi was doing. Gaddafi was trying to separate the, especially the North African Islamic states, but to a different currency, getting away from trading oil on the U.S. dollar, starting his own nuclear and biological experiments and equipment. And President Bush basically, you know, had sent over letter, envoy, whatever, got word to him, said, you're next if you don't quit doing what you're doing. Because at that time, they were also allowing in eastern Libya, around Derna and Benghazi, out in the outside in the deserts, training camps for Al Qaeda and foreign terrorists to come in and be trained to go into Afghanistan and Iraq and kill Americans. And so Bush basically said, if you don't stop that, then you're going to die next. We're going to do to you what we did to Saddam. And Gaddafi, being the selfish dictator that he is, said, okay, hey, I'll go do that. And so that's when he started really attacking and going after those camps and things like that. Well, there's always been, if you look at the history of Libya, there's been really 2 tribes that have controlled that area, and there's one in the east and one in the west, and they've always been separated, and they've always had conflict to this day. Even after what happened in Benghazi, there's still that conflict. Well, my favorite person in the country, Hillary Clinton, being the diplomat that she is, saw that as an opportunity, I think. And this is all just my opinion.
Yeah.
But she saw that, you know what, Gaddafi has always been this bad guy. It's easy to manipulate him into being the bad guy. Even though he's doing things that we want him to do, she decided that she wanted to put together a coalition to go after him,
take him out,
to show in 2000. This is in 2010, going on to 2011. So she could show that because I believe that she was going to run for president then. She knew it then. She, the hierarchy had planned it. She was just edging her bet. Now she can show that she has foreign policy strength and resilience and can change things in the world.
She can take down terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
She has power and skills and strategy.
And all of that started because of that. That's when they started bombing and supporting. Ambassador Stevens in 2011 went in with a team to represent the State Department and help and coordinate getting them the assets from the U.S. to help overthrow Gaddafi, and ultimately ended up in 2011, the end of 2011, where they got rid of Gaddafi and he got killed, and she was on that trajectory to go to be president. Well, then September 11th, 2012 comes around, when now the Al-Qaeda was part of those groups and those militias that we supported to overthrow Gaddafi.
Yeah.
Whether we knew about it, I ain't gonna say we knew that that's what they were or not, but that's what they were. Because when I was there, some of those same militias still had Al-Qaeda people that were loyal to Al-Qaeda in them and running them. So when the attack on Benghazi happened, and it ended the way that it did, that was the start of the fall
of Hillary
Clinton.
Without that night, there's a probability that she could have became president.
Yeah, I believe so, because the after effects of Benghazi and them trying to cover up the story and lying about what it was, saying that it was all caused by a video that had came out, which was a lie completely, and all of that they did, and then it caused the investigation into Benghazi, which during that investigation that the Congress had started, that's where they found the private email server and all the other stuff that came out that she had lied about, and then she had destroyed those, the server and the laptops and all of that stuff, which just really showed the American people
what was going on,
what she was and how she truly was, that she thought she was above the law from everything. And those two things happening all because she thought she would orchestrate doing it to get to the presidency, I think hindered her from, was significant in losing the presidency to Donald Trump.
That's insane. That's insane, because if the attack wouldn't have happened, and then
there never would have been an investigation.
Yeah, because the investigation started from the concept of you guys being left behind, which kicked off the whole thing, which led to the server, which led to America's trust in her starting to drop and drop and drop and drop. That's a pretty wild sequence of events.
Yeah. And, all those little things that had to have happened to make, was orchestrated, and I even carry it on further, so then President Trump came in, and, I think President Trump, when he came in office the first time, had to go through what he did there, which included losing the second election, or his rerun then. And what he learned from those first 4 years that he is now using to make sure he gets things done this term is all of that's connected. And I think it's all, it's orchestrated because we are in a, like you said, a revival time in this country where people are looking back to faith, to Christ, to our Lord. And, and understanding that we need to bring that back into this country. Because if not, we're getting inundated with people that don't believe in God or believe in God the same way that we do. And then it's not that everybody needs to believe in this the same way that we do, but our founding fathers, our Constitution doesn't work if we don't have the moral fiber that is built around being Christians. The Constitution doesn't work.
Because it was Bible-based.
It was all Bible-based. And I think a lot of people are seeing that. And I think that's what we're seeing with everything. I mean, we've got to get our leaders in faith need to step up. Those in the churches, the mega churches, the small churches, instead of, we can't just continue to be, fluffy Christians. When God said, turn the other cheek, what he was saying is, I don't believe he was saying, let him hit you again. That's forgiveness. Turning the other cheek is forgiveness. Defending yourself in Christ is, you look at how Christ did it. You look at through the Old Testament, New Testament, how God brought his faith or wrath to the people that did not believe or was trying to stop, and how that came about. And I think, all of those things have to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, he's lion and lamb. And the American church has been a lot of lamb for a while. Mm-hmm. But he did also flip some tables and build some whips sometimes.
Yeah.
When it was justified.
Yeah. You look back into the Old Testament, Gideon hiding in the mill house. Lord, I can't do this. I can't do this. Give me 3 million, show me this and I can do it. Well, then he shows it, and he kept questioning it. And we got to quit questioning whether we can and just do. Mm-hmm. Because God's going to give us, and he's like, hey, you got 3,000. No, wait, you don't need 3,000. I'll give you 300. And yeah, you're the weakest of your tribe, but through me, you're not.
Yeah. Through him, we're able to accomplish anything he calls us to.
Yeah.
But so many times that thing will look impossible. But if he's with us, it's completely possible.
Yeah. How did 6 of us on the rooftops of Benghazi survive the hundreds of people that attacked us? And I don't know how many there were. I don't know how many. I've heard rumors of things, but somebody had said that, and I couldn't tell you who, but somebody had said that there was a mass grave of like 200 people. And I don't think I think that's an exaggeration, but because if there's 200 dead, that means there was probably 600 or 800 that attacked us, and I don't think there was anything like that.
Yeah, a couple hundred though,
maybe. But even then, you have, and the thing people don't understand is, in the movie, they show us all online kind of shooting and fighting. Well, you can't do that. Who's covering your 6 and your left your limits and your right lateral limits? At any time there was either 2 to 4 of us shooting, and that was it.
Watching all sides.
Mm-hmm.
How many times do you feel like you should have died that night?
For sure 3, because there was 3 mortars that hit the top of the roof, and there were 6 total. One hit the outer wall, a couple hit in between, and then the last 3 hit the top of the rooftop. The first one that hit went through my arm, and that's what really damaged my arm. I was the first one that was significant. I was in the middle of a mag change, standing up to start shooting again, and kind of knocked me back. That the blast went through me, killed Ty on the other side of me. The next one hit again a little bit deeper into the center, towards the center of the house, and Glenn was moving behind trying to get separation so we weren't all in the same spot, and he got hit with that one and he died from that one, and I took more shrapnel from that, and then the third one hit. So I had 3 81 millimeter mortars land within about 17 feet of me.
And those are the ones that have 130-foot kill radius?
Yeah, it's the American 81s have about I think it's 127. These, looking at them after the fact, from their tail fins, they were French 81s, and I think there's from through research was 131 feet.
Jeez, that's insane.
So if you're within 131 feet, you have a 95 to 97% chance of dying.
95 to 97, and then 3 of them fell all within about 20 feet from you.
Uh-huh.
So statistically impossible.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the armor of God, I would not be here.
Hmm.
And then, as I said earlier, on the plane from Tripoli, so I had a tourniquet on my arm from 5 o'clock, 5:15, 5:11 in the morning till 10:30, 11 o'clock before I got to the first hospital, which was from Benghazi to the airport, then from the airport in Benghazi to the airport in Tripoli, and then to the hospital. It was a Libyan hospital and Libyan doctors that put my arm back together, probably saved my life. And then from there, later that evening, we flew from there on an American medical bird from there to Germany. And on that plane, on that trip going across to there, to Germany, they had to intubate me and resuscitate me.
So you died on that helicopter? Airplane.
Yeah.
And you didn't find out about that right away?
No, I didn't know that until I was just, for some reason, I was going back through my medical records about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm reading through, intubate and resuscitate. I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Great way to find out that you died.
That's crazy. And you just, how do you think about that now? It's like some of us live, some of us die for some reason, but we don't know that exact reason.
Yeah, because the question I get when I tell people that is, they're like, well, did you see anything? I'm like, I didn't know, because I didn't know anything about it. I don't know if I did see something or not. I mean, but no, I don't. And I think that, if I was going to say why, because it's not necessary in the Lord's path, it wasn't necessary for him to present to me any other way than he already did on the rooftop.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you said, I mean, there's no statistically I shouldn't be alive from the rooftop alone.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild because a friend of mine recently found out that he's a younger guy, and he recently found out that he had spots on his brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I was chatting with him right after he found out, and the prognosis right after finding out was not great, because they're potentially cysts and spots that would need to be removed that were going to be difficult. And so it could have led to a shorter life, or it could have led to a completely different life. But it gave him this unbelievable change of treating each day as if it was his last.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty quickly after he got that imaging. So we were chatting about that a lot, on how interesting and fascinating that is, because we all should really be living each and every single day like it's our last, whether we get a diagnosis like that or we don't, because that is the reality for all of us. And especially like the American average age for adult male death now statistically is 73.
Mm-hmm.
And so that day's coming for all of us, whether we're going to make it to 73 and hit the average. Maybe we'll beat the average. Maybe we'll be 10 years short of the average. Maybe we'll get hit by a bus when we walk out of this building. But it's not anything any of us are getting out of. But why some of us have a little bit more time than others is something that only God will know. But living every day in that mindset that this might be our last is difficult. It's difficult to stay in that.
Well, and I think yes and no. I mean, because I think how you think about it, I mean, for me, I tell those that I love them every day. And I won't go to sleep without telling them that. And I think it's the littler things that matter the most that we need to pay attention to from that aspect is making a difference, because my goal in life is to make a difference in somebody else's life every day. And if I can do that, then I know I did something good. And I can go to bed that night knowing that I did something good. And, and making sure that those that are around us know that they're loved, that we're doing something not just for them but for others outside that we run into is doing that. And I think that's, for me, that's my way of living every day as if it's my last, because I've had my last day a couple times.
Yeah.
And and it's okay. And did I say something to somebody else? Did I make a difference? Did I talk to Christ about somebody? All of those things. And it's not even, I'm not asking everybody to go out there and be a Bible thumper, because that ain't what you want either. Be preaching and making a difference in somebody else's life as an example of how you live yours, which goes back to letting your light shine.
Yeah.
Helping somebody across the street. Holding the door for somebody, giving them a smile. The simplest of things is what makes a difference in others. And to me, that's, that's the fulfillment I get in doing it. I don't need to, because when you first say, I got to live my life like it's the last, so that means I'm going to slide into heaven with a bottle of Jack Daniels in one hand and AK in the other and say, what a life.
Yeah.
That ain't what it needs to be.
Yeah.
Because what matters the most is those around us. Do we spend enough time with our loved ones? Things I've changed in mine is, I've got a 13-year-old daughter, I've got a 28-year-old daughter and a 30-year-old son, and I've got 4 grandkids. And it's spending that time, especially with my 13-year-old daughter. She's a 13-year-old daughter. And anybody who's had a teenage daughter knows what that's like. But it's taking that time at night and, hey, let's sit down and play Scrabble. Let's put a puzzle together. Those little things, instead of going and separating into each of our rooms and playing a game and watching TV or scrolling on my phone.
Yeah. It's that time.
Yeah.
Using it wisely.
Yeah, because do you want to end up in heaven saying, man, I wish I would have. I wish, because we all think when we're on earth, I think that we think, I wanted to go on that next vacation. I wanted to go skydiving. I wanted to go do all these great things. I think once you get to the other side, you're going to say, did they know that I loved them? Did they know that I cared for them? Did I make sure that they were okay? Because that's
what's going to matter.
Yeah, that's really what's going to be the significant things, I think.
For those that are around us the most, for those that are closest to us.
Yeah, because I sit there and think, you know, as busy as I've been since Benghazi, it's probably been 7-8 years since, we finally took a vacation last year for about 4 or 5 days. We went down to Phoenix, but that wasn't really a full-blown vacation. But, you know, when are we going to do that? You know, well, we'll get to it, but
just running.
Yeah. You know, so it's figuring that out.
Yeah.
And making sure you do that you have that vacation, that you make those times that matter. You know, my daughter's 13, and I mean, my thing with her is going out driving, because I'm teaching her to drive at 13. Actually 12 is when she started, but you know, it's just, I started driving when I was young, but it's that time me and her go out and we drive in the parking lot of the school or someplace like that, you know, and dirt roads out on the prairie.
Yeah.
It's some of the best conversations that we have.
Oh, I bet she loves it so much.
Yeah.
Just being with you, but also the empowerment of driving at that age.
Yeah.
I mean, those are things she'll remember forever.
Yeah. And those things matter much more than the big grand things I think I should do.
Yeah, it's kind of like that light thing. It's all these small things that are going to have ripple effects. It's these little bites that we're taking out of things or pouring into things. It's not the big, massive, monumental ones that we tend to focus on.
Yeah, because we think, it goes back to miracles. We want those big miracles. When, you know, those little ones probably matter a whole lot more and make a bigger impact than what we'll ever know. And we're not meant to know them. We won't know it until we get to heaven.
So we have Roan sitting under the desk here. Beautiful Malinois, and she's been phenomenal. No, I was telling my wife last night that at dinner, the way she just lays there and doesn't move, even when people walk by or servers come up to your table. When did this heart that you've developed in the formation of Shadow Warrior, how did that all start?
I mean, Shadow Warriors itself started probably 2013, 14. I mean, I started talking about it when I was still in the hospital, because and it originally started, our goal was to help those private security contractors that work in the shadows. You know, most of them you'll never know of them, you'll never hear of them, what they've done or what they're doing, but they do get killed and injured. And because they're contractors, they have a workman's comp policy. They don't have access to the VA system because you're not in the military anymore. You're a private citizen who is contracted by whatever three-letter alphabet soup agency there is. Yeah. And so if you get injured, you have that. Now, like myself, I was probably, because of the nature of Benghazi, I probably got a lot of extra help with access to military hospitals than would have had Benghazi not been the political thing that it was. Because typically if you're injured, that you get sent to a hospital where you live that has the ability to treat what's wrong with you.
Mountain Tough is the fitness app trusted by the dedicated. Mountain Tough ethos is backed by, we've always wanted to be the best in the world at helping our customers become more mentally tough. So inside the Mountain Tough app, you're not only going to find all of our physical training programs, but you're going to find additional training as well so that you can stay sharp physically, mentally, spiritually, and nutritionally. The Mountain Tough app also allows you to train no matter where you are, anytime, anywhere. Additionally, the Mountain Tough app is going to have programs from beginners all the way up to elite athletes. And all of our programming is structured in a way that you can start with no gear at body weight, and you can go all the way up to programming that is full gear. So you can do that in a robust home gym or your local gym. There's no excuse for you not to start today. With Mountain Tough, you can conquer your goals with the ideal program for your lifestyle and schedule. Train with equipment or just your body weight on your phone, tablet, TV, or web browser. Most importantly, Mountain Tough will help you train your mindset so you are always ready for anything life throws your way. Mountain Tough is offering the Mountain Tough Podcast listeners an incredible offer. 6 weeks free on the Mountain Tough app. All you need to do is use the code MTNPOD to redeem your 6 weeks of training. That'll be a 14-day free trial plus a whole additional 4 weeks of training. Just go to mountaintough.com and enter code MTNPOD for your 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app.
As a contractor, I only got paid for when my feet were in the country I was contracted to work in. So on September 12th, that was my last day of getting paid. So I went from making $700-800 a month to zero overnight. And then I was in the hospital for 6 to 8 weeks, and then another year and a half of physical therapy. And I was making then workman's comp maxed out at $5,100 a month. We almost lost our house. If it wasn't for a bunch of people at the agency that passed an envelope around, and because I was back in December to get another operation, and I stopped back by the office, and they people handed me an envelope to help with Christmas.
Like a on hands Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah. So, and we had talked about it while I was in the hospital, and then it didn't really formulate till probably after that we just didn't want anybody else to have to go through that. The spouses we don't live together. We don't all live in the same area. There's guys all over the country. So, and a lot of with me and Tig lived in the southern part of Colorado Springs. I lived in the northern part of Colorado Springs, and we didn't know where each other lived until after I got injured, because it just wasn't something that came up. And I had worked in different places that Tig had, just not at the same time. So there's no family support services for the wives or the children. My wife found out that I was injured when she woke up that morning and looked at the ticker tape under Fox News that said Benghazi was attacked, 4 killed.
That's how she found out. Dang.
And she didn't get a call from anybody until probably somewhere around the morning of the 13th, when I was in Germany after I got out of my surgery there. So
almost a full day, she probably thought you were gone.
Well, because it came out on the morning of the 13th. So, or the 12th, that the attack had happened. So it was the 12th, the 13th, and probably the morning of the 14th. So 48 hours.
She thought you were dead.
Yeah, she didn't know one way or the other. She called the State Department. They didn't say anything to her because they don't know who she is. She called the agency. They're not going to say anything because they don't, who are you actually asking? There's none of that connection. There's no one that has that connection that knows whose wives are who.
Yeah.
Necessarily.
Different than like a special operations team.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we didn't want that to happen to anybody else. So we started Shadow Warriors Project, and then I was given a service dog, Roan. by another group called SOW, Special Operations Wounded Warrior. And that's really what took me into the canine side of things. And so we help with bills and things like that. Now we help with a canine therapy course. We will work if somebody needs a service dog, we'll help get them a service dog. It's not always, a lot of people want the Belgian Malinois because it's a badass dog. That isn't necessarily what somebody always needs, though. And so we'll pair that up to making sure the right dog gets with the right person. Louie, okay? Get over here. No.
I won't hurt you because it's all sweaty.
Come here. Platz.
We'll cut that out. Don't worry.
We're just talking about dogs, too.
Leave it in then. Leave it in.
And that was Roan saying hi to her way of saying hello to somebody that walks in that kind of took her by surprise.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, but and then we've grown since then, and with the end of the Afghan war and the war in Iraq. Contractors are still out there, but there's actually probably more contractors out there than there are service members. We have 172 diplomatic facilities. There's contractors at every one of them. But we do now, we opened it up to veterans and first responders for law enforcement as well, because, the PTSD isn't just a combat thing. And our true heroes, and this is something we started, I think it's 2 or 3 years ago, my wife started a thing she calls her Warrior Heart, because there's plenty of stuff out there for the veteran or the contractor. There's plenty of stuff for the families, but there's nothing that focuses on just the spouse. And what we've seen through we've been over 10 years now, been around, that one spousal suicide of veterans and contractors and first responders is growing exponentially. It's almost as high as it is for veterans.
Dang.
People ask, where do we have that? Because I get a lot of times, well, how do you know that? Well, it's because we talk to other nonprofits that are dealing with it and know about it. You don't, because there's on a death certificate, there's nothing that says veteran or spouse of veteran or spouse of contractor or spouse of law enforcement. So it is hard to find that, but there's a big struggle there, because there's, every time we deploy, it's trauma on our family as well, because they don't know if we're coming back, and for both the kids and the spouses. And again, the spouse themselves puts aside their trauma to take care of the kids while we're gone and to be the leader of the family. And then when we come back, they relinquish that back to us a lot of times, and a lot of times they don't, and they struggle with that. But then it goes again. Then because in 9 years of contracting, I deployed 22 times.
Jeez.
When I added it all up, I was gone for 7 out of 9 years.
Jeez.
I justified it because it was only 2 or 3 months at a time.
Yeah, but 7 out of 9 years.
Yeah.
You're overseas.
Yeah.
Or you're gone.
So that's really our passion. I mean, it's a big push going into this next year, is raising the money to do, instead of 1 or 2 spousal retreats, is doing at least 2 to 3 or 4. And it's a hard raise, because I think the things that our veterans and our our veterans and first responders are going through are not recognized by everyone, and if they are, a lot of people I talk to, well, you guys chose that way of life. Well, yeah, and I'm not asking for anything, but we should still be the right thing to do, is to take care of them, and
take care of those who are taking care of us.
Yeah, because if we have healthy veterans, healthy families, and I think not just the family of the veterans, it's families in general across this country. I mean, our biggest problem in this country is the fact that we have a lot of kids being raised by a single parent.
Oh, it's an epidemic.
It is.
Fatherlessness.
And whether that's fatherlessness from serving in law enforcement or military, or from whatever else is out there, because we've come to this idea that, hey, being a single parent's okay. Having multiple kids from different fathers is okay. It's a culture thing that we've built into, I think. And, it's not that it's wrong, but it's not right.
Yeah, and it's spiritual warfare. I mean, the enemy knows if he can take down the family, he can take down a community. If he can take down a community, he can take down a country.
Yep.
If he can take out this next generation of youth, it's all a spiritual attack of stealing, killing, and destroying.
Amen.
And I can tell that the canines are close to your heart,
Mm-hmm.
and the canines that you're doing through your nonprofit work is a big important deal for you. How much do you feel like getting Roan changed your life?
I mean, I don't even know if there's words that can describe it. I mean, I grew up with dogs. They weren't as much, I didn't have the relationship I had with Roan with them. They were cow dogs. They worked the farm and the ranch. And now I'd say my horse was pretty close, because I had a horse. If I had problems, I'd go ride my horse, go down to the river bottom, go do something like that. But even then, it's not the same as having a dog. I think that's completely different. And really, it's calms my soul when I'm, because when I get anxious, she gets anxious. She mirrors me.
Mm.
And then when she feels that, she knows how to react to help bring that back down. And I think there's, like I said earlier, I don't think there's any animal better for that. And they're so, the dogs in general just can do so much. And I think we fail to understand that, because one of the other things that we do with dogs is we get them trained to detect electronics. And we'll donate them to ICAC's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. We can get a dog to smell a SD card as small as your pinky nail hidden in this room anywhere in here.
That's insane.
The limit to the dog, what they can do, is limited to what we think they can do. Because I think there's so much more that they can do that we don't even, because we don't think it's possible, it's not possible.
Yeah, so we don't train them for it.
Yeah.
Are you seeing some very amazing testimonials from some of the guys that are getting the dogs?
Yeah. We've got, even after just going through our 5-day, it starts on a Sunday. People typically come in on a Saturday, or a Sunday, and then we fly back out that following either Saturday or Sunday. And even just spending, because they spend the whole time with their dog. They don't, for that next 5 days, we pair them with a dog. They don't get to go home with it through the therapy course, but that's our vetting process as well as to who really needs a dog, because you can tell how they interact with that dog and where they're at and how much they need it. And, it's significant in the change and listening to them talk about what it does. We had one guy, he parasails.
Mm-hmm.
So he built a harness where he could take his dog parasailing with him.
Dang.
And so that dog would fly with him every time he went up, different things like that, and it was just so cathartic for him to have, that thing that loves him unconditionally. And I think that's a lot of it too, because there's people that had that childhood trauma that struggle with something that, never having something that loved them unconditionally, which kind of goes back to what you're saying about family is, we want to get rid of PTSD. We got to strengthen the family. We got to fix that.
Yeah, and that unconditional love is exactly what we're all craving.
Yeah. And even as teenagers, you know, we go out, and as parents, we got to have some fences, some left and right lateral limits, let them go out for a little bit, but then they come back. And there's, you know, and then they get to go out a little bit further as they get older and that builds that comfort, because they always know they've got something to come back to. When you take that away from that child of having that thing that I can come back to that's secure and safe, the home, and those that are in that home that love me, I think that really changes the psyche of a person.
Yeah, it's like Roan liking to go into her kennel. They know they have that sanctuary.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, and we as humans need that same thing. We can shut that side of our brain off if we know that we're in a safe environment, and by shutting that side off, we can relax and unwind and process a lot of things.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy, because the dogs go into the kennels or the crates or their den, you know, because they are secure. They only have to watch one direction. And that's our home is that same thing. Mm-hmm. Having a home where you're protected on all avenues except for that one, you know, it allows you, like you said, you can turn off that fight or flight going on that happens at times.
Nick Jones was on the podcast, and he was a Marine Raider, and he received the Navy Cross from a big hornet's nest battle in Afghanistan up in the mountains, and they had a bunch of guys that were getting killed because the Taliban was shooting out of this cave that they had really laid the structure out of, like wall-mounted guns that were very difficult to get shots in at, and he lost a couple of his best friends, and he went to get him, and then he himself got shot through the calf, and it hit the main nerve that goes through your calf, which created years and years of rehab on trying to get a lot of that nerve damage to go away in that leg without losing the whole leg. And he got a service dog through that whole experience, a chocolate lab named Fletcher. And he had a pretty big battle. He shared the story on this show, multiple years of trying to overcome his trauma, his PTSD, fighting substance abuse, lots of alcohol. And one night he decided he couldn't do it anymore, and he went into his garage, and he was ready to commit suicide. And he loaded his Glock racked around in the chamber, put it next to his temple, and pulled the trigger. And that particular specific bullet had a misfire, which is so rare on like a 9mm round. Mm-hmm. And he was very confused because of how rare that is on why the gun didn't go off. So he racks the slide and looks at the bullet, and the bullet has an impression on the primer. So the firing pin hit the primer, but it did not go off. And he just breaks down in tears. Is like a ball of tears on the floor of his garage. And he's still ready to try again, even though he saw a striked primer. And his service dog, Fletcher, picks up on the energy shift in the house and the crying going on in the garage. And Fletcher kicks the door down between the house and the garage. So the dog blew through the door and just took Nick down and just started licking his face. And Nick decided not to commit suicide. Like, the dog literally kicked the door down.
Wow.
It was unreal.
Not surprising, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I mean, that, because everything that lives has energy, and that energy is something that the dogs, because we talk about scent, but everything they do isn't through scent. It's through energy, through vibration is what I call it. And they feel that vibe. Like, there's a great example is he felt the vibration in the universe right then between him and and he knew what that was. No different than when Roan, goes up and puts her head on somebody's lap because they're struggling.
They know.
I was at an event in Virginia just last week, and a wife that had lost her husband in the special ops community of the agency, and she's telling her story, and Roan gets up and goes over and does the same thing. And it's, there's not enough, I don't, a lot of people talk to me about dogs, rescue dogs, and I have a difference of opinion, I think, than a lot of people. Is I don't want to take a dog that's had abuse and pair it with somebody who's had abuse, because I don't need them both to do that. So that's one reason why we don't use we don't use dogs that come from shelters. I want to give them, I want to put two people together where that dog's going to be the most it can for that person and not have any of its own drama or trauma or anything like that as well. Because and there's plenty of dogs out there, and it, the range for it can, a dog to get it to the veteran and get the veteran through a therapy course and through a training on all that runs about $30,000. But how cheap is that?
Yeah.
People are like, well, that's a lot of money.
It's less than a truck.
Yeah.
And it does a lot to completely transform your life.
It does. I mean, and to your point, you asked what she does for me. Well, it's not all that she does for me. It's everything she does for others that does for me. Around you. Yeah, because she's an ambassador in her own self. And because when I go somewhere, I don't worry about people petting her or not. For the most part, depending on where and when, but if it's an event, she's as much an ambassador for Shadow Warriors as I am, because she has this way of hugging people where she'll come up and she'll lean into them, and she'll just kind of it's like they'll have to almost lose a step, and they're like, what's going on? I'm like, she's trying to hug you. That's her way of showing her emotion for them. Yeah. And it's funny because it's not always the same with every person. Because
she's picking up on that energy. Yeah, they're incredible animals.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Very much so.
Well, man, I can't thank you enough for coming out. I appreciate you making the trip up to Bozeman, and I love hearing about your shift and your transformation and leaning more into that tidal wave and being more towards that full surrender end of the spectrum. And I love you sharing the story of looking at Benghazi now from a God lens of looking at things in reverse, because that's one thing that has always helped me significantly, of looking back at life. And when you look back at life, you see that God was always there, God was always providing, and God's timing was always perfect. And it's so helpful to look at that, because in reverse it's obvious, but as we move forward, you want clarity, you want answers, you want different timing, you want your own timing. But to pause and look back and be like, wow, all of this happened for a very specific reason. I can see some of the reasons, and there's some I can't see.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that it happened the way that it did. And it's cool to hear that from your side.
And just, and every time I tell it, something different comes about, depending on what I take from the conversation, what I gain from it, or what I can give to others for them to gain from it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, it's really, again, one of those things that just, I'm grateful for so many reasons that I didn't die, but had I know where I'd be.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about looking back, it just takes me, again, I can't tell you where it's in the Bible, but, hey, Lord, I see 2 sets of footprints in the sand. You're walking beside me, but then in the most struggling of times, there's only one.
Mm.
And that's because I was carrying you.
Yeah.
And we just got to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And accept that. Because I think more people want that relationship with God than even those that don't know it want it. Because when you're around when you're around people who have trust and true faith, one is there's no fear, because, what's the worst thing that can happen today? That I die and go to heaven? There's a lot of worse things that can happen other than that.
I know.
So why be afraid of it? Not be stupid, but you still have to have your discernment. But, when you open up every door to every room in your heart and in your soul to the Lord, and you live your life for that, it's just different. And that's the best preaching that somebody can do, is just living. Because others are going to see that, and they're going to be like, wait, why is that guy always upbeat? Why is that? Because I want to be like that. And, and being a Christian isn't always easy. Because if you're not a Christian, the devil's like, yeah, I've got that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are, you're going to have, it doesn't mean life's going to always be perfect when you accept Christ as your Savior, but it's going to be better and more fulfilling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. He's going to want to attack you,
Mm-hmm.
especially now that you're part of the kingdom. But knowing that this life on earth is just such a vapor. If we're going to heaven, and we're going to live there eternally, this little earth section that we're on is such a flash in the pan.
Yeah, because you think about it, if you put, eternity divided up into sections, your time on earth is a hair's width compared to eternity.
Yeah. Just
So,
one hair.
Yeah. So you live your life to make that time in that one hair exciting, or do you live your life to make everything after that wonderful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for having me. It's a great trip up. Montana's always beautiful. So,
God's country.
It is. It is. It is. We need to keep it, along with Wyoming and Colorado. We need to get Colorado back to the right God's country.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. We can't let what happened up here happen down there.
Oh, yeah. Colorado is, we're fighting that. We're fighting that right now with politics, with ballot initiatives. You would think it wouldn't be that difficult to get people on board to make trafficking a child for sex a life in prison without parole, or making sure that you're protecting women's sports. It's something as simple as having a male, female, and a co-ed. You're not discounting anybody. Hey, if you want to be co-ed, be co-ed.
Mm-hmm.
At least you know what you're facing.
Yeah.
But don't take over a male or a female. And then the other one that we're always fighting for down there is to make it illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to have a permanent sex change.
And those are hard to pass.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You think about that, It's like you can't get a tattoo unless you're 18. You can't drink beer or alcohol until you're 21. You can't enlist in the military until you're 18. But you know what? If you feel like you're something different, then you can go get things cut off and changed.
That is bonkers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not old enough to make that decision, and your parents shouldn't be making it for you either.
Mm-mm. Shouldn't be easier than a tattoo to make that decision.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, the Bible warns us of all this too. I mean, there'll be days where what is good will be called evil, and what is evil will be called good, and we're navigating a lot of that in 2025. There's a lot of that right now.
Yeah, we are. And sometimes I sit there and I think, Lord, let it come soon enough so I can still be strong enough to battle for you.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be that time.
Yeah.
Where we all need to have that spiritual battle that's going to come with the end of times.
Mm-hmm.
Hope I'm still young enough and strong enough. That's why we gotta, that's what you guys do.
Gotta train.
You gotta train.
Yeah.
You gotta train your spirit, and you gotta train your body.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta take care of it as a temple that it is, and do that by eating well, limiting those things that are bad. I mean, you look at, and again, I know we gotta quit, but I go to grocery stores. I remember in 1990, 1995, somewhere around there, your average grocery store had 9,000 items in it, 9,000 different items that it sold. Now your average grocery store has 30,000 items that it sells.
Dang.
I mean, go down the potato chip aisle. Look at how many different brands of potato chips, but not just how many brands, how many different, there's flavors,
Yeah, all the flavors.
Yeah. When I was a kid, there was regular potato chips, sour cream and onion, and I think barbecue, and that was about it.
It's
now
there's 3-4x.
Yeah.
Dang.
And it's all ultra-processed food.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to stay sharp mentally, physically, spiritually every day.
And that's what I love what you guys are doing here, is you're promoting it, providing access to it, and, I mean, every church should have a gym.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be awesome.
They spend enough money on other things. Why not spend it on a gym that's going to help?
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Great way. Preach while you're working out.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a new thing.
All right. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you. God bless.
What a great conversation with Mark, with Oz. Remember, every single Mountain Tough episode, we are looking for that golden nugget. There was a lot in this conversation, but the one thing that stood out to me that's not necessarily a golden nugget, but is super fascinating, is when Oz talked about the mortars hitting the annex. So the mortars were 81 millimeter mortars that have 120-something kill radius, and 3 of them landed within 20 or so feet to Oz without him dying. So that is a fascinating component to his story and his life story of you just never know. You never know who's protecting you, who's watching out for you, and why that matters. So certainly he should have died on that annex with 3 of those landing so close to him. But he was spared, and he was spared for a reason and what he's able to leverage the rest of his life for. We all have cases like that in our own lives, whether we know them or not, where we were spared. And he even wrapped it up with what he talked about there towards the end, as well as how he just tries to make every person's life better. Anyone he interacts with, how can he serve? How can he help? How can he make that individual's lives better? What a great conversation. It was fun having Oz in the lab in Bozeman. Thanks for being here. Love you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.